Tragedy struck Yukon, Oklahoma on the morning of April 22, 2024, when a 10-year-old boy called 911 after he woke up and found his parents and 3 brothers lifeless in their home. Police responded to the call around 9:35 a.m. at 2804 Mirage Street and they found the 5 bodies at the home. The Candy family members that lost their lives were 42-year-old Jonathan, who was the father, 39-year-old Lindsay, the mother, and their sons 18-year-old Dylan, 14-year-old Ethan and 12-year-old Lucas. All 5 people were shot and lost their lives. The 4th and youngest boy that called 911 was left unharmed. Lindsay Candy grew up in Prague, Oklahoma, according to her Facebook page and a post from a childhood friend, Cammie Cruz. Cammie and Lindsay attended school together and sang side by side in church growing up. Cammie shared fond memories of her and Lindsay's years growing up together. Cammie said she and Lindsay shared a friendship that always picked up where it left off, and hearing the news of the Candy family's demise has been devastating and unimaginable. Cammie wrote, "I have been without words for so many hours, without tears because I don't know how to process this. You were so loved. You were so special to so many people. Loved fiercely by your boys. Brought laughter to every conversation, and even more so with the girls. Your sister's best friend and light in your mom and dad's life." Jonathan was described as a family man and that he and his kids always got along. Jonathan worked at the Paycom Center as a part-time game night engineer for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was at Sunday night's Thunder-Pelican playoff game just hours before the shooting. T.J. Armstrong was Ethan's Little League baseball coach. He described Jonathan as a great guy. He said, "First time I met him, he introduced himself and shook my hand so hard I felt like a cartoon character. He was constantly thanking us for everything and giving us hugs." TJ also said, "I have lots of love for the Candies and will miss them tremendously. Just remember that this was a beautiful family with amazing souls, and we just want to remember the positive memories for the surviving child." Rhonda Armstrong has known the family for 3 years, since Ethan joined her husband's baseball team with Mustang Youth Sports, and said each of their souls radiated brightness. Rhonda said, "Every time I went over to that house, or they came over to my house, it was just smiling and laughing." She continued saying, "I could have the worst day at work and completely forget about my troubles the second I saw their smiles. They were the kindest, sweetest, best people I've ever known in my whole life." Rhonda and Lindsay grew close as they cheered on their sons in baseball, and she said Lindsay cheered the loudest of them all. Rhonda described Lindsay as the type of person that would give you the shirt off her back. She loved so hard, and she was so kind. She treated Rhonda's son as her own. Dylan, the oldest of the 4 boys, always made sure his brother, Ethan, was at baseball practice and attended almost every baseball game. He was a student at Oklahoma Baptist University, OBU. Dylan was described as an incredible young man with a big heart. He was passionate about music and drumming, and he was a very social person. OBU said in a post, "The OBU family mourns the sudden loss of our fellow Bison, Dylan Candy. While his time on Bison Hill was short, he will be remembered by many, especially his fellow members of the Bison Brigade." Ethan was a student at Mustang High School. He was described as an amazing kid that could make anyone laugh no matter how bad your day was. He was the light of the room and his team. Lucas was a student at Meadowbrook Intermediate. He was described as a happy kid that was as smart as a whip. He was always running around playing with his friends carefree, just enjoying life. According to Master Sergeant Gary Knight, of the Oklahoma Police Department, investigators determined that sometime overnight, Jonathan became involved in an altercation with his wife, Lindsay. Gary said, "At some point, he armed himself with a gun, shot her multiple times, ending her life. At that point, he systematically went through the home, shooting and executing their children." The victims' bodies were found in multiple areas of the house, with police finding 2 bodies upstairs and 2 others downstairs. According to police, at least 1 child was shot in bed. Investigators still do not know what drove Jonathan to shoot his wife, children, and himself. Police found no record of ever being called to the house before for any domestic abuse reports. According to an application for a search warrant, there were no signs of struggle. Gary said first responders and law enforcement who arrived at the home were haunted. During the shooting, the 10-year-old was in his room sleeping with the door closed and a box fan on, which was presumably muffling any sounds. Gary said, "There is no indication he didn't sleep through it." He woke up after hearing their fire alarm going off. In a statement to local media outlets, Jonathan's cousin, who was not identified by name, said, "Our entire family has been left shattered and confused with so many questions we won't ever have answers to." Jonathan was the one whose jokes and goofy attitude kept everyone smiling. His cousin continued saying, "Aside from these events, his children and wife were his entire life. I simply can't fathom what went on, but please, hug your family tight. It's going to be a very long healing process for everyone affected." Burcham, Jonathan's neighbor, also shared only positive memories of the husband and father. He said Jonathan was always willing to help his neighbors with anything they needed, was it a car or helping with a lawnmower. He considered Jonathan as a friend, and they spent a lot of time together flying their drones. But Burcham said he and Jonathan had confided in each other that they each struggle with depression. Burcham said, "He must have really been having a hard time." At a press conference, Sergeant Gary said, "Make no mistake. What happened in that residence was nothing short of a massacre. The children were hunted down and executed." Authorities said it's still unknown what caused Jonathan Candy to shoot his wife and 3 children. Police also said they are unsure if the shooting was planned or spontaneous. Gary said investigators don't know why the 10-year-old son was left unharmed, adding that, in the end, nobody's ever going to know the answer to that. Court documents say the 10-year-old boy was asleep during the massacre and that he found the gun on his father's chest. They also say the smoke alarms were going off when he woke up. Among the items collected from the home by the investigators were several guns, including rifles, handguns, and a shotgun. There was evidence some of the guns had been recently fired. Police also found a glass pipe with burnt leafy residue. The Candy's home is now blocked with wooden fencing and a sign in front. Neighbors said there has been a lot of traffic coming in and out to see the house that was once a home to the loving family of 6. What is still unknown about the case is the motivation behind the massacre, why the 10-year-old boy was left unharmed, and how many guns were used in the shooting or in the home. Sergeant Gary said that police are no longer investigating the case and don't expect to release any further information. However, the Chief Medical Examiner's office will determine the final cause and manner of demise for each individual. Those autopsy reports could take weeks or even months to complete. The 10-year-old boy was placed with family, and they said he is doing as well as can be expected, and they are in the process of setting up a trust for him. His uncle, Brent Remorowski, said, "My nephew is a sweetheart, and he's going to need a lot of help to get through this. People love the kids. I've gotten a ton of messages from everyone. It's truly heartwarming the love people have for them." The loving uncle set up a GoFundMe that will cover funeral costs, as well as counseling, education, and his nephew's well-being.